Most people do not understand, or they do not want to understand, what happened in the garden that separated Adam and Eve from our Creator. They do not understand the exceeding wickedness of deciding right from wrong for ourselves. We have an all-knowing Creator that wants to teach us His ways so that we can live with Him and His family forever and ever in harmony. He wants to teach us to love as He loves, and in order to accomplish this in us, His righteousness must become our righteousness. This means that He must teach us His righteousness, and in order to accomplish this, we must show up for His class. Our life in the flesh is to be His classroom. Choosing to decide right from wrong for themselves was the original sin of Adam and Eve. He tells us this in Genesis 3:22. And Yahweh Elohim said, "Look, man has become like me to know good and evil, or to know right from wrong." They lifted themselves up to the level of their Creator to rebel against His instructions. This is the same thing that Satan and the legions that followed his lead did. Rebellion is a stench to our Elohim. He is all righteous. He is perfect, and He wants to perfect us in His image. This is why He put us here. Who are we to tell the Master Potter how we will be shaped? Yet this is exactly what we do when we decide to not live by His every word. When we make the choice to not obey His instructions, we are lifting ourselves up before His face and telling Him that we know better than He does. And His answer back to us is, "Cursed be the man or the woman who does this." And He cuts us off from Him, and He and His Son do not make their abode in us. After the serpent led Eve to rebel against her Elohim, she subsequently led her husband to rebel with her. In Genesis 3:13, starting 13, verse 13, we read, "And Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, 'What is this that you have done?' And the woman said, 'The serpent led me astray, and I ate.' And Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, 'Because you have done this, you have cursed all cattle and every life of the field. Upon your belly you will walk, and you will eat dust all the days of your life.'" The King James says that the serpent was cursed above the cattle and above every beast of the field. This wording implies that the serpent was cursed more than the cattle and the other beasts, but the Hebrew text do not have the word that denotes above them. The serpents certainly had their legs removed from them from that point on to be an additional sign and a reminder of this sin to us. The text just says that all cattle and all life in the field were cursed because of the serpent and what he did. Looking at how things are in the world, it is obvious that the cattle and all other life was cursed. He goes on to add in verses 17 through 19 that even the ground and the plants were cursed as well. Our Creator knew that man would rebel against Him when He put us here. He knew what giving man free will and the choice to obey Him or not would bring forth. This was all by design to help Him build His family. It had to be this way. He knew what He was going to have to do in order to bring those of His creation who would choose to become His into subjection to His will. Part of our programming requires our choice to be programmed by Him when He calls us. This life that He gave us in the flesh is designed to show us how big of a transgression it is to not obey Him by deciding right from wrong for ourselves. This is supposed to teach us to hunger for His righteousness to become ours. And let Him tell us what's right and wrong. Even the stony ground is supposed to be a reminder to us of what rebellion to Him causes. I've spoken in some of these videos why Satan was even allowed to have access to Eve through the serpent in the first place. It was because she was already looking at the fruit and desiring it. She desired something different in her mind than her Creator wanted to give her and what He offered to her. She was rebelling against Him in her heart. She did not grasp that this life is a testing and proving time. She wanted the here and now. She did not want to live forever. And she allowed for a different way of thinking to enter into her thoughts through a lack of fearing going against her Creator, and then Satan was given access to her. Obviously, it was no big deal to Eve that the serpent was talking to her. This shows us that the original state of creation was perfect. Man could even communicate with the animals, as it will be one day before this sin, the lions laid down with the lambs, and the children would have played with the serpent's den. And of course, the serpents would have had legs. But his creation wanted to tell him how it is instead. Most since then have chosen to continue to decide right from wrong for themselves. But he gave us an escape plan to return to him if we will agree to hearken to his instructions. Our entire life in the flesh is about escaping the curse. He goes on to say in the next verse, he says, I will put hatred between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and it, meaning her seed, will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heels, referring to bruise her seed's footsteps. We read that Adam and Eve were cast out from the garden after this and shut off from the tree of life, which represents being shut off from our Creator's seven spirits when we rebel against him. And so it has been for nearly 6,000 years. Satan has been allowed to strike at man's steps, at least all who did not come under Yahweh's wings of protection and remain there. This is also a prophecy that Yeshua would come from the seed of Eve and provide a way to return to his Father's protection. And he would bind Satan's authority that he was given for those who would return to his Father. And when he returns as a lion, he will bind Satan altogether for 1,000 years. And after the short season that he is let loose is over, he will be destroyed for good. The following verse he says, and he said to the woman, I will greatly increase the pain of your pregnancy. In toil you will bring forth children, and your husband will be your desire, and he will rule accordingly. There is much being said in this verse. In order to understand, we have to look back to the cause. It was Eve that first looked upon the fruit. It was Eve that Satan was allowed to sift. And without transgression, there is no separation from our Elohim. There will be no male or female in his family when we're born again into his kingdom. But here in the flesh there is. And this is by design to teach us things about obeying him and letting him become our source for all things, and about his plan to build a family. He even created us to have children to teach us about his plan to build a family. He wants to raise us up to be his children, and he wants us helping him build his family by bringing others into it. With the curse, families were also given a monthly reminder of what deciding right from wrong for ourselves causes. This monthly reminder is what flows out from a woman each month during her menstruation. During this time, blood departs from her and washes the unfertilized seed out from her. This time was given to the woman for a purpose. It is blood that atones for our transgressions, because sin carries the death penalty. During a woman's menstruation, the blood departs from her, and our Creator told us that she is unclean or impure during this time. The blood represents eternal life departing from us when we decide right from wrong for ourselves. It represents that choosing right from wrong for ourselves removes Yeshua's blood from covering our transgressions for doing so. Or maybe it never was applied on the person's behalf if they hadn't entered the covenant with them to start with. His blood does not atone for us when we live life deciding right from wrong for ourselves. And the woman's unfertilized seed departs from her, signifying that her seed will also perish if her and her husband do not teach their children to live by his every word. All of this is symbolism that is given to us to be a constant reminder to the woman what the sin of her mother Eve caused, so that she would hunger to not abide under the curse by continuing in the same sin. And this time is to be a reminder to the whole family to be proactive in breaking the curse by raising up children who will not rebel against their Elohim. This time of separation is not just for the woman, it affects the whole family. This monthly separation is to be an ongoing reflection of what our transgression caused, so that we sin not. The same is true of the wild animals and the stony soil and the thorns and the thistles and disease and even our temporary bodies. All of this is by design to teach us to hunger to be out of the temporary body, and teach us to not decide right from wrong for ourselves, so that we can live forever in his family. This broken or cursed world is to teach us to desire to leave it and to give us a desire to live to be free from it. Instead, most cuss the cursings and think that they are victimized by the brokenness of the world. Most do not accept accountability that they are making the same choice that Adam and Eve made. Most are choosing to remain in the curse because of their choice to rebel by deciding right from wrong for themselves. There was no such monthly cycle for the woman before the transgression. Her seed did not need to depart from her. Today, it could be argued that with modern hygiene aids that are available, that the separation laws do not exist for the woman, since her blood does not flow out unto her bed or unto what she sits upon. But it is not the blood itself that makes her impure. It is deciding right from wrong for herself and rebelling against her Creator that makes her impure. And the same is true with the man. The separation laws are to point us to what the blood leaving the woman represents. The blood represents our life being cut off when it departs from us. The ultimate end to the curse is the death penalty. If the woman is walking in the new covenant, then the blood leaving her is representative of that Yeshua's covering will leave her if she returns to deciding right from wrong for herself. The same is true with the man if he returns to deciding right from wrong for himself. But the woman was given this time directly because of how sin entered into the world. This time of separation is one of many reminders of the curse that were given to us, and it is to be a reminder of the curse, of the cause of the curse, so that we would learn to fight to remain under the covering of Yeshua's blood. One might argue that if a woman is covered by Yeshua's blood because she is walking in the new covenant, that she is not impure during this time. This is certainly true, but there's a problem with using this argument to say that she does not need to observe the statutes associated with this time. The problem is that we must be obeying our Creator's statutes in order to be covered by His Son's blood. And some of His statutes include His instructions that are associated with the woman's menstruation cycle. If a woman is living her life to be covered by Yeshua's blood, then even though the blood is leaving her, she is not impure. And for this reason, she can use this time to rejoice because His blood is covering her. Yet she and her family must still obey the instructions and the statutes in order for His blood to be applied on their behalf. This is by design to complete the programming in our hearts and minds. It is not a coincidence that a woman's moodiness often increases for a phase associated with this time. This moodiness sometimes manifests itself to expose an attitude that she still has in her heart. Everything that is associated with the curse is designed to point our attention to have a desire to be right in our Elohim sight. It is about living this life in the flesh to be free from the curse. It is living the truth that sets us free and causes Yeshua's blood to cover us. Our time here in the flesh is not about His statutes that we must live in the flesh. It is about what these things are supposed to teach us, what we're to learn from them. He uses things in the flesh, such as a woman's monthly cycle, as tools to teach us to be separated to Him and to teach us what separates us from Him. If we choose to hearken to His tools by living in them, they give us a desire to live to not be separated from His tree of life. They become constant reminders for us to remain in His perfecting process. He uses His path to help set our minds apart to be fed by Him, even covering our heads and wearing blue tassels as He commanded us for this purpose. Without walking in His instructions, it would be impossible to have our minds and our hearts constantly on Him. Without these things, He cannot be our desire completely. So these things are not against us, they are for us. Walking in His instructions help keep us focused on not causing Yeshua's blood to depart from being our covering. If we do something that causes us to have to observe a time of separation, we should use this time to examine self and measure if we are deciding right from wrong for ourselves in any way. His commandments and statutes are not negative. It is bitterness and rebellion in one's heart that causes His instructions to be negative to them. His judgments that tell us that we are ceremonially unclean or separated from him, were given to us to make us hunger to be in agreement with him so that we would not be separated from him. They were given to cause us to fight to stay under the covering of Yeshua's blood in order to escape the curse. And this is our hunger if we do not have a rebellious attitude towards his instructions. It is a rebellious attitude that causes us to not rejoice in his instructions. It is the attitude of the original sin that causes his commandments and his statutes to become burdensome. Without sin, there would not have even been death. A man would have just graduated from the flesh into spirit beings without even having sickness and disease. How sweet would this have been? Yet he knew that all would sin. It was part of the package of giving us free will. The blood symbolism associated with the sacrifices and associated with Yeshua's blood is to teach us the death penalty that results from deciding right from wrong for ourselves. Everyone that continues in this transgression is under the curse. We must not turn to the right from his Torah, nor to the left from his Torah. This life in the flesh is given to us to teach us to live for the time when nothing can separate us from his love. This will be a time when there is no longer any blood in us that can depart from us. He wants our whole life, or he wants every breath focused on becoming as he is and rejoicing in being separated to him. His instructions help us to remain focused on being separated from everything that would cause us to be separated from him. They teach us to flee from anything that would cause us to not be found in his favor, and they remind us of what separates us from him. The curse results in the death penalty. In Genesis 2, verse 16 and 17, and Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, because in the day that you eat of it, dying you will die. The end result of living the truth that sets us free is we are set free from the curse of the death penalty. Living the truth includes living his statutes and his commandments and his ordinances. His word is truth, and in it is life. If his word is a burden to you to live it, this is an attitude of rebellion that is manifesting itself in you. This attitude is your heart expressing that you are not truly being set apart to him. It shows that you are not sold out to him to become his child. It shows that you are still eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and dying you will die if you do not turn from eating of this fruit. So you see, his Torah with his statutes and judgments really are just part of his testing and proving process that he gave us here in the flesh. You can either choose to delight in his process and eat of the tree of life, or dying you will die. But he wants you to choose life. He simply set before us this choice.